The silence in my house was no longer peaceful. It was pointed, like even the walls had learned not to speak unless spoken to. Ever since Helen passed, the rooms had grown quieter by choice, not by nature. I moved slower through the halls now, each creak of the floorboard a reminder of both age and absence. At 73, I had more medicine bottles than cups in my kitchen, and my mornings began with classical radio and a small, bitter pill for cholesterol. I wasn't bitter myself, not exactly, but something had shifted inside me after Riley started college, or said she did. It started as small things, the way she avoided phone calls, replying in texts that read more like invoices than conversations. Need $220 for lab fees. Urgent. Books cost more than expected, plus help. Finals week, no time to talk. Love you. Always love you at the end, like punctuation meant to soften a transaction. At first I didn't question it. I was proud. Proud that she wanted to study environmental science. Proud she had chosen UC Santa Barbara, close enough that I could pretend proximity was still connection. I'd promised her father, my son Mark, before he died, that I'd look after her, and I did. I paid for her tuition, her rent, her textbooks. I handed over my credit card the way a man might surrender a sword in the face of a greater purpose. But pride is a tricky thing. It can grow brittle with time like sun-bleached wood, and mine cracked the day I saw Mrs. Deacon squinting at her phone on the porch. "Albert," she called out, one hand shading the screen. "Isn't that your Riley?" I stepped over, squinting too. Mrs. Deacon, bless her, was half blind and twice as nosy, but she had a soft spot for the drama of other people's lives. She turned her phone to me. There she was. Riley, bronze-skinned, laughing, a frozen drink in her hand with a straw wrapped in a paper umbrella. The caption read, "Sunset vibes in Tulum through her finals. Escape our beach baby. Tulum, not textbook." I didn't say anything. Just nodded as if my granddaughter being in Mexico during midterms made perfect sense. Mrs. Deacon clicked her tongue. "You paid for that vacation, didn't you?" "I paid for Chemistry 101, I said, more to myself than her. Then I went inside and sat down slowly, as if the truth had weight. That night I didn't sleep much. I went over my bank statements. I couldn't make sense of half the charges. There were payments to places I didn't recognize, trendy names that didn't sound like bookstores or school departments, a few airline codes, Uber rides at midnight. I could still feel the imprint of Riley's teenage voice in my ears. "Don't worry, Grandpa, I got this." But she didn't, or maybe she did, just not in the way she'd promised. By morning I was tired of pretending I didn't see. I wasn't fluent in Instagram or filters or hashtags, but I knew when someone was lying. And I knew I needed help. I found Connor Lyle through the community center board. He was younger than I expected, with a face too cheerful for IT work. He came on a Wednesday, brought his own laptop, and wore socks with tiny flamingos. "So," he said, pulling up a chair beside mine at the dining table, "you want to learn how to see what she's posting online." "Not just that," I told him, pushing Riley's last text across the table. "I want to know what I've been paying for." Connor didn't laugh. He nodded once and opened a window on the screen. "Let's start with her public account. You'd be surprised how much people share when they think no one's watching." He was right. I wasn't surprised. I was devastated. Because there she was again, Riley in a white bikini, Riley dancing with strangers, Riley toasting champagne in a pool that looked nothing like a dorm. And that's when it hit me. I didn't know my granddaughter at all. Not the way I thought I did. Not the way I'd sworn to. I sat there for a long time after Connor left, the computer screen still glowing faintly with that image of her perched on the edge of an infinity pool, holding a glass like she'd earned it. I couldn't decide what hurt more, the lie or the ease with which she'd lived it. There's a particular ache that comes with realizing love isn't enough to keep someone honest. I'd loved Riley like a second chance. After Mark's accident, she was the only person in the world who carried both his grin and Helen's stubbornness. She was bright, creative, opinionated, the kind of girl who used to sit on the floor of my study, flipping through photo albums and asking me questions about World War II like I'd lived through it myself. "You're a relic, Grandpa," she'd once teased. "I mean that in a good way. Maybe that's all I'd become, a relic with a pension and a predictable password." The next morning I took my walk earlier than usual. The fog was still heavy over the hills, and the palm trees along my street looked like ghosts. I walked past Mrs. Deacon's porch, waved to her, even though she was still watering her roses in her nightgown, and continued toward the cliff edge where the ocean could slap the truth back into my chest. The benches there were damp with dew. I sat anyway. I wasn't angry. Not yet. That would come later, after the questions. Right now, I was only confused. Why would she lie? Why fake exams and fees and fake all that stress? Did she ever intend to go to college, or was that just part of the illusion she built to access my money? I tried to picture her sitting in a classroom, notebooks open, sunlight hitting her cheek the way it used to on our Sunday drives, but the image wouldn't hold. Instead, I kept seeing her eyes behind those ridiculous novelty sunglasses, grinning at the camera while someone else, some boy, probably, took the shot. I went home and printed out 3 pictures from her account. One on the beach, one at a rooftop bar, and one of her lounging in a white robe captioned "Recharge Mode On." I placed them on the kitchen table like evidence at a trial, and then I did something I hadn't done in a while. I picked up the phone and called her. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice light and casual. "Hey, Grandpa, everything okay?" I could hear other voices in the background, music, laughter, a blender. Somewhere tropical still, I assumed. "I saw your pictures," I said quietly. There was a pause, long enough to rearrange tone. "Oh, you follow me now?" "No," I said. "A neighbor showed me. I didn't realize you were taking a vacation." "It was just a few days, spring break. Everyone goes somewhere." "I thought you said you were in finals." More silence, then a sigh. "Grandpa, it's not that deep. I needed a break. It's stressful, and I figured..." "You figured I wouldn't notice." I kept my voice calm, but something cracked under the words. She started talking fast, words running into each other like they were late for something. She said she loved me, that school was still happening, that things were just more flexible now. "Remote options," she explained. "Online tests. Everything's hybrid." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I didn't tell her that Connor had searched for her name on the university's student directory and come up empty. "I need to go," she said suddenly. "Low battery. I'll call you later?" I hung up without answering. Then I stared at the 3 photos again and realized something I hadn't noticed before. Each picture had a different tagged location. None of them were in Santa Barbara. One said Playa del Carmen, another Miami, the third Florence. She hadn't just lied about college. She had been traveling across the world, and I had paid for every mile. I folded the photos neatly, as if precision could make the truth easier to hold. Then I tucked them into the old cigar box where I kept things I didn't quite know what to do with. Helen's last letter, Mark's high school ring, a Polaroid of Riley in rain boots at age 4. That box had become my archive of unfinished business. The house felt colder after that call. Not from temperature, but from exposure. Something sacred had been breached, and it echoed in the quiet like wind through a broken window. I didn't tell Mrs. Deacon. Not yet. She'd want details, and I didn't have the energy to narrate my humiliation just yet. Instead, I watered the tomato seedlings, rearranged the garden hose, and busied myself with things that stayed where I put them. By Saturday morning, my head was clearer, and I made a decision. Not revenge, not yet. Just understanding. If I'd been fooled this long, I needed to know how deep it ran. I called UC Santa Barbara directly, asked for enrollment verification for my granddaughter, Riley Keene. The woman on the line was polite but firm. "We don't have a student by that name registered in our current system." I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the rotary phone like it might offer me another answer. Connor came by again that afternoon, bringing iced tea and a quiet sort of presence that didn't press. "You okay?" he asked, not pushing. I handed him the printed screenshots and the school statement. I think I've been subsidizing a lifestyle." He looked over the papers, his brow tightening. "You want me to help dig further?" "Yes, but not just tech stuff. I need someone who understands how these things work now. I don't know what Venmo is. I don't understand how someone pays for 4 flights in 3 months and still calls it college." Connor nodded. "You're asking the right questions." He showed me how to track digital spending. Without breaking any laws, he was quick to say, "If she's using your card, you have the right to see where the money goes. I already knew the truth. I just needed to look it in the eye." There were charges to boutique hostels in Portugal, Italy, and Mexico, spa visits, designer boutiques, concert tickets, one restaurant bill for over $300 labeled simply "Brunch with the Girls." It read like a travel diary, only mine was the signature at the bottom. "She's not in trouble, is she?" I asked. Not quite sure whom I meant to reassure. No, just entitled. Maybe reckless, maybe lost. Connor sipped his tea. "But not beyond hope." I nodded. But something inside me was beginning to cool. I remembered the way Riley used to hold my hand at the boardwalk, pointing out every dog like it was a rare animal. I remembered her reading to me when I had eye surgery, mispronouncing big words, but never skipping them. I remembered all that, and then I remembered the message that said she needed 200 for a biology access code, the same day she posted a video of herself diving into a cenote. That night, I called her again. She didn't answer. I left no message. The next morning, she texted me, "Hey, Grandpa, sorry, I was at a yoga retreat with no signal. Everything okay?" No signal. That was her excuse. No signal for love, no signal for truth. I didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, I went to the bank and froze the card. Then I wrote her a letter by hand. No anger, just a request. "Come home. We need to talk. Face to face." I sealed it and left it on my mantel for a day, unsure whether I'd send it, but I knew this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about finding the girl I had raised when no one else would, and the only way to do that was to strip away every version of her I'd invented to keep myself comfortable. The letter stayed on the mantel for a full day and night before I drove it down to the post office. I didn't use the mailbox outside. I walked inside and handed it directly to Mr. Lynn, who'd taken over the counter job 2 years ago. He weighed it like it held something heavier than words. "Tractor standard?" he asked. "Standard's fine," I said. I didn't want it to arrive like a threat. I wanted it to arrive like a hand held out, firm, but not clenched. That night, I made myself a real dinner. Not soup, not toast. I roasted chicken the way Helen used to, with lemon wedges stuffed inside and rosemary from the garden. The house smelled like something alive again. I even set a place for Riley, out of habit, her old seat. Napkin folded just the way she liked it when she was little, like a triangle sail on a sea of mashed potatoes. She didn't show up, of course, but I needed to remember who I was before she started rewriting me. I spent the next few days in a kind of quiet rhythm. No calls from Riley, no emails. Connor checked in once, mostly to say he'd scrubbed the last of her logins off my phone. "You're clear," he said. "If she tries again, she'll need your permission." Clear. That word sat with me. I didn't feel clear. I felt older than I had the week before, but also steadier. I could still feel the betrayal, yes, but it wasn't a wound anymore. It was a reckoning. On Thursday, just after sunrise, the doorbell rang. Mrs. Deacon had warned me the night before that someone parked a rental car outside my house and sat there for nearly 20 minutes. I figured it was a mistake. But there she was. Riley. Hair pulled back in a bun, no makeup, oversized sweatshirt that belonged to her father once. She looked younger, without the filters, paler too, and scared, though she tried to mask it with a smile. "Hi, Grandpa." I nodded once, stepped aside. "You came." She walked in slowly, like she didn't recognize the place. She probably didn't. I'd boxed up a few of her things years ago, assuming she'd outgrown them. But now I wished I'd left 1 or 2 out. A thread. A breadcrumb. Something. "I got your letter," she said, eyes roaming the living room. "And?" I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I should come, but then the card stopped working, and I figured, You figured I was mad. She looked down at her sneakers. I figured you were done with me. I motioned to the couch. She sat, knees tight together like a child waiting for punishment. I'm not done, I said, but I'm not blind either. Silence again. Then she whispered, I didn't mean to lie. You didn't just lie, I said. You built a life on my belief in you, and then you turned your back on both. Tears came, but not loudly, just a slow shimmer. I was going to go to school, she said. I really was. But then everything felt wrong. I didn't want to stay in Santa Barbara. I didn't want to live that life. Everyone on Instagram looked happy, so I thought, maybe if I moved, if I traveled, I could be that girl. You were already that girl, I said. At least, you were to me. Her shoulders trembled. I didn't reach for her, not yet, not until she reached back, and then she did. It was light, almost hesitant, her hand brushing mine like she was testing the memory of comfort, but it was enough. That small gesture opened a space between us, not the kind you fall into, but the kind you build on. We sat like that for a while, saying nothing, just letting the silence stretch into something less sharp. Eventually, I stood and poured us both a glass of water. She took hers with both hands like a child again, though she didn't drink right away. You want to tell me the rest? I asked gently. She nodded, but didn't meet my eyes. I didn't mean for it to go that far. At first it was just one trip. A friend had points for a flight. Said we could go cheap. I thought if I went, I'd get it out of my system before classes got real. But you didn't come back. No, I kept finding reasons not to, and people kept showing me places. Then the idea of school started to feel small. I watched her, the way her voice curled around her shame, soft and cracking. I wanted to be someone else, she said. Someone who didn't have a dead dad and a weird past, and a grandfather who still used a rotary phone. I almost smiled. That rotary phone's outlasted 3 iPhones, I'll have you know. She chuckled, but it was short-lived. I didn't hate you. I wasn't trying to steal. I just didn't want to feel stuck. And I figured you wouldn't really notice. You had your garden, you're quiet. You didn't seem to need me. There it was. The other truth, the one I hadn't wanted to see either. Maybe I didn't show it enough, I admitted. But I needed you more than I let on. She looked up, tears welling again. I didn't want your money, she whispered. I just didn't know how to ask for anything else. We were quiet again, but it wasn't uncomfortable this time. It was full. Full of all the words we'd never found before, full of the time we'd lost and maybe still had. Eventually, I said, you know, if you told me you wanted to travel, I might have helped, on my terms, with honesty. I didn't think you'd understand. I'm not 110. I've seen some things. That made her smile for real. You hungry? I asked. There's leftover chicken. It's not Instagram worthy, but it's made with real rosemary. She followed me into the kitchen, and I reheated the food while she sat at the table, tracing the grain of the wood like it held old stories. Maybe it did. When we ate, she asked about Helen, stories I thought she'd forgotten or never cared to hear. I told her about our first date at the pier, about the night we got caught in a rainstorm and danced under the streetlights like fools. You really loved her, Riley said quietly. I still do. She nodded, slowly. I want that kind of love someday. You start by loving the people who don't leave, I said, even when you give them every reason to. She lowered her fork, met my eyes. I want to start over. Not just with you, with life. I don't know what I want yet, but I know it's not that. Not pretending. I studied her face. No makeup, no pose, no filter. Then let's figure it out, I said. Together. And I meant it. Not as a promise to fix her. I'd learned the hard way that people weren't projects. But as a quiet vow to walk beside her, even if the path was uneven. The next morning she was still there, curled on the living room sofa under the Afghan Helen had crocheted years ago. I watched her sleep for a while, her breathing soft and steady, her brows finally relaxed. For the first time in a long while, she looked like a 19-year-old girl. Not a curated version, not a filtered traveler, just Riley. She stirred when the coffee scent reached her. "Morning," she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. I poured her a cup, handed it over. "You always take it with milk?" "Used to. Now I just drink it black. Makes me feel serious." "Then here's your serious cup," I said. We sat on the porch steps with our mugs, the sky still stitched with early fog. She pulled the afghan tighter around her knees. "What now?" she asked, not looking at me. "You mean today, or the bigger question?" "Both." "Well," I said, "today you help me trim the hedge. It's getting wild." She smirked. "Manual labor." "I see. As for the rest, maybe we start with you being honest. With me, with yourself." She nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about community college, just a few courses, see what clicks." "That's a good start. I don't want to fake it again. If I go for real. I work, I study, I pay for things myself." "I'll help," I said. "If you're honest, I'll be your net, but not your parachute." She looked at me, eyes glassy. "Thank you." There was more to do, debts to sort out, cards to close, wounds to mend. But that could wait. First came small work, roots before branches. She stayed with me for a week, helped in the garden, learned how to change a fuse, cooked dinner one night, a lopsided stir-fry that tasted better because it was hers. Every evening we talked, not just about the damage, but about everything, music, her mother, her dreams. I told her stories about Mark, some funny, some sharp. I let her see her father as more than just a name in a family tragedy. By Friday, she had a plan. Not a perfect one, but hers. Classes at the city college, part-time job at a plant nursery, a room in a shared house near the school. She'd found it online, scheduled a visit. She didn't ask me to come, but I offered. She said yes. We visited the house that Saturday. It was modest, chipped paint, creaky stairs, but the backyard had an orange tree, and Riley lit up when she saw it. "I always wanted one," she said. That afternoon, she signed the lease. Used her own name, paid the deposit from her own account. I didn't ask where the money came from, and she didn't offer. That silence felt like respect, not secrecy. Back at my place, she packed the small suitcase she'd brought, hugged me hard. "I'll visit," she said. "You better." She lingered at the door, her voice softer now. "You think I'll be okay?" I looked at her, really looked, not for what she'd been, but who she was now. "I think you already are," she nodded, blinked quickly, and left. The house was quiet again, but this time it wasn't hollow. It was healing. I moved slower that week, not because of age, but because the air inside the house had changed. There was a stillness to it, not absence, but something like peace, the way a room settles after you've finally said what needed saying. I tended the garden with more intention, pruned back the lavender, mulched the tomato beds, and rearranged the chairs on the porch like I was expecting someone. In a way, I was. Not Riley, necessarily, though she texted every couple of days, short updates that made me smile. No, I was waiting for something quieter, maybe myself. Then came Sunday. Mrs. Deacon was trimming her roses when she saw the man walk up my driveway. He was tall, lean, maybe mid-40s, wearing a crisp polo shirt tucked into pressed chinos, the type of outfit that screamed control. I didn't recognize him at first, not until he said his name, Trevor O'Hara, Riley's mother's husband. I remembered now, Riley's stepfather. I hadn't seen him in nearly 6 years, not since the awkward custody conversations after Mark died. He'd always seemed polite, but slippery. "She told you, I assume?" he said, without asking to sit. I stayed on my porch step. "Told me what?" He shifted, clearly unused to resistance. "That she's back in the States, that you've taken her in." "I didn't take her in," I said. "She came home." He let out a clipped laugh. "She told us she was in Italy, studying design. We sent money. We believed her." I nodded. "You and I have something in common, then." He frowned, tone sharpening. "Look, I'm not here to argue, but you need to understand Riley has a pattern. She manipulates. She plays sympathy. She gets what she wants and leaves wreckage behind." I'm aware. Then don't be fooled. I stood, slowly. She lied to you. She lied to me. But she also came back and owned it. She's trying, he snorted. Until she needs more, then she'll spin another story. It took effort to keep my voice level. I'm not naive, Mr. O'Hara, but I don't believe growth is a straight line. She's young. She fell. She's trying to get up. That's more than I've seen from most adults. He stepped forward. You think she won't take advantage again? That she's suddenly cured? I don't think anything, I said. But I'm willing to walk beside her while she figures it out. Are you? He didn't answer, just stared, jaw tight. She's not yours, he finally muttered. No, I said, but she was never yours either. You married her mother. You tolerated her. I raised her. That silenced him. He left without another word. The gravel crunched beneath his perfect shoes. I didn't tell Riley about the visit, not right away, not to protect her, but to protect her progress. Some truths weight better than others. That night, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the photograph of her as a child, gap-toothed, arms flung wide in front of the ocean, and I knew this wasn't over. The old wounds, the people who preferred her broken, they would come back, try to remind her of who she used to be, but I wouldn't let them define her. Not again. Not while I had breath. That promise settled in me like the slow, steady pulse of a tide, not loud, but insistent. I began clearing the back shed the next day. It was Helen's idea originally to turn it into something livable, a studio or reading space, maybe a place to paint. But life had a way of interrupting soft plans. Mark's accident, Riley's move, then Helen's decline. The shed had turned into a catch-all for abandoned projects and rusted memories. I needed it now, not for me, for her. The space was small but solid, wood bones still strong beneath the dust and mildew. I opened the windows, aired out the corners, and swept away the cobwebs. There was something deeply satisfying about the work. It didn't ask questions. It simply responded to effort. Mrs. Deacon wandered over when she saw me dragging out boxes. You building something, Albert? Maybe rebuilding, I said. She nodded, then eyed the space. For Riley? I didn't answer, but she knew. People like her always knew more than you told them. Connor showed up that Saturday. I hadn't asked him. He said he just had a feeling. He brought tools and that same calm competence he carried like a second skin. What's the goal? He asked, pulling on work gloves. Make it hers, but not fancy. Just honest. We worked quietly, painted the walls a soft white, sanded the old floorboards until they warmed beneath bare feet. I repurposed Helen's bookshelf, wiped it clean of dust and regret. Connor wired in new lights. We added a second-hand desk, a clean mattress, curtains that let the light breathe. By Sunday night, it looked nothing like the shed it had been, and everything like a beginning. I called Riley. You free tomorrow? I asked. After class. Why? You'll see. She came in the afternoon, cheeks still pink from biking over a smear of soil on her pant leg. Work study at the greenhouse, she explained. I smell like compost. You smell like effort, I said, handing her a glass of lemonade. Come with me. She followed, puzzled but quiet, as we walked around back. I opened the shed door and stepped aside. Her breath caught audibly. Is this for you? When you need stillness, when you don't want to be where you are, but also don't want to run. She stepped inside slowly, hands brushing the edge of the desk, the corner of the shelf. Her gaze lingered on the small window overlooking the garden. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Don't say anything. Just use it. Her eyes filled, and she turned away for a moment, blinking hard. I don't deserve this. You didn't earn it, I said. It's not payment, it's belief. There's a difference. She crossed the room and hugged me fiercely this time. No hesitation, no filter. This changes everything, she said into my shoulder. Maybe, I replied, or maybe it just gives you space to become yourself. She spent her first evening there writing. I watched from the kitchen window, her silhouette framed by the soft light of a desk lamp. I didn't ask what she wrote. I only watched her head bend in concentration, her pen moving slowly across the page. For the first time in years, I felt something uncoil in me. Relief. Not just for her, but for myself, too. It's a strange thing, realizing your lungs have been half filled for years, that you've been holding your breath for someone else's safety, someone who didn't even know they were the reason you were bracing yourself every day. But now, I breathed easier. Riley came by more often, not out of guilt or obligation, but rhythm. Some days she studied in the shed, curled with her laptop and a mug of black coffee. Other days she joined me in the garden, learning how to pinch tomato suckers, how to tell when basil was about to bolt. She asked questions, she listened, and she smiled, not for the camera, not for performance, but from someplace real. One afternoon, as we sat shelling peas, she looked up and said, "I feel different here." "How so?" "Lighter. Like I don't have to try so hard to be liked." "You never did," I said. She gave a soft laugh. "Tell that to the 20,000 people who liked my poolside photo and never once asked how I was sleeping." I didn't say anything to that, just kept shelling peas. Later, I found her sketching something at the desk in the shed, rough pencil lines that formed the outline of a greenhouse. It wasn't polished, but the details were careful, thoughtful. I didn't interrupt, just left a cup of tea beside her and walked away. That night I made lemon chicken again, and we ate with the doors open to the evening breeze. Riley told me about her favorite professor, about a classmate named Tamara, who wrote poetry about crows, about a part-time gig she might get at a plant nursery. She wasn't planning anymore, she was building. After she left, I sat on the porch with a glass of cold water, watching the moths dance in the porch light. I wasn't waiting for her this time. I was just grateful she had someplace to go and someone to become. The next morning, a letter came in the mail. It was from the college, a formal note thanking me for attending the open community feedback session on adult learners. Except I hadn't. Riley had signed me up for the mailing list, apparently in case I ever wanted to take a class myself. I smiled at that. Maybe I would. Maybe photography or woodworking or writing. A few days later, I went to the shed while she wasn't there, just to tidy up. I noticed a small note tucked into a corner of the bookshelf. It was folded, half tucked behind a gardening book. On the outside, in her handwriting, "For when you wonder if it was worth it." I opened it slowly. Inside it read, "It was. Every mile, even the wrong turns, because they brought me back to you." I sat down on the edge of the bed and let the words sink in. There was no performance in them, no apology either, just truth. A few minutes later, I heard the back gate creak. Riley's voice floated in, laughing about something with a friend I hadn't met yet. And then I smiled. Not just with my mouth, but deep in the chest, the kind of smile that sticks around even after you're done. Not because I got her back, but because she came back whole. It was a Tuesday when she brought her friend by, and the one whose laugh had carried through the garden gate. They stood in the kitchen like it was the most natural thing in the world, tracking mud on the rug and giggling about a plant they'd overwatered. "This is Elsie," Riley said, eyes glinting with something I hadn't seen before. Pride, maybe. "She's in my poetry class. She's the one I told you about who wrote the crow pieces." Elsie was short, with thick glasses and hands that moved when she talked. She shook mine warmly, looked me in the eye. "Riley says you make the best lemonade in Santa Barbara. I came to test the claim." I liked her instantly. We sat on the back porch and drank from mismatched glasses while the girls talked about everything from seaweed fertilizer to Greek mythology. I let the conversation wash over me, only chiming in when asked. There was a rhythm to them, honest, curious, light. It wasn't performative, the way Riley used to speak when she was selling a version of herself. It was present. Later, Elsie helped me carry in the empty glasses. "She's different around you," she said, setting hers in the sink. "Better or worse?" "Safe," she answered, like she's not trying so hard to outrun herself. After Elsie left, Riley lingered. She stood near the sink, fingering a dish towel. "She likes you," she said. "I like her back. She's been good for me. She doesn't care about Instagram. She writes in a notebook. She's slow to answer texts, but fast to show up. "Sounds like someone I used to know," I said, and Riley blushed. Then after a pause she added, "I told her everything, about the card, about the traveling, the lies." My chest tightened, but I stayed quiet. She didn't judge me, just asked why I didn't think I could tell the truth in the first place. "And what did you say?" I said, "I didn't want to disappoint the only person who still believed in me." I reached for her hand. "You're allowed to fall apart, Riley. I just need you to let me help when you do." She nodded, eyes glistening. "By the way," she added quickly, almost shy, "I signed up for that writing contest at the college, fiction, max 1,500 words. You let me read it? If it's good, if it's honest, it's good." She laughed, softer now. "It's kind of about us, a grandfather and granddaughter on a road trip, but not the fun kind. The kind where they don't know if they even like each other anymore." I chuckled. "Sounds familiar." She kissed my cheek before heading to the shed that night. No fanfare, no announcement. Just a soft, steady rhythm. Of feet on gravel, of doors opening not with apology, but belonging. I stayed at the table a long while after she'd gone. The house, once again, was quiet, but not in the old way, not in the way of missing people. It was the quiet of things being in place. That night, I couldn't sleep, not out of worry, but something else. So I went to the kitchen and found her contest story on the table, left open. She'd titled it, "The Second Mile." The last sentence read, "It took a long time to see that the road back wasn't a punishment. It was the map to where I began." I closed the notebook carefully, and I realized she hadn't just returned. She was writing her way home, but not everyone wanted her to arrive. The letter came folded in thirds, crisp and formal, like something a lawyer would draft on heavy paper. It was from her mother, forwarded through some legal office in Los Angeles. The tone was cool, rehearsed, all uppercase civility. She wanted clarity regarding Riley's current living situation, questioned potential undue influence, and requested a financial accounting of recent monetary decisions. I read it twice, then once more, not because I misunderstood, but because I needed to believe someone who shared Riley's blood could be that far removed from her life. There was no apology, no curiosity, only threat, masked as concern. I waited a day before showing Riley. We sat on the porch, the envelope between us like a cold meal neither of us wanted to touch. "She's not worried about me," Riley said, not even opening it. "She's mad I stopped needing her." "You don't owe her silence," I said, "but you also don't owe her a performance. She's not getting either." Her voice was steady, but I saw the flicker in her eyes, that old reflex, the one that made her flinch before truth. Later that night, while she was in the shed, I made a call. Not to threaten, not to shout, just to clarify. Her mother picked up after 3 rings. "Albert, I received your letter." Pause. "Good. I wanted to be sure. She's safe. She's studying, she's working, and she's doing better than I've seen in years. I'm her mother. You stopped being that when she needed help and you offered distance instead. That's not fair. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be true." The silence that followed wasn't uncertain. It was final. "I won't contact you again," she said, clipped. "I know." I didn't tell Riley about the call. She didn't ask. But that weekend, she baked lemon bars, something she hadn't done since she was little. She left a small plate on my kitchen counter, a sticky note on top. "Thank you for staying." No signature. Just the sweetness and the ink. 2 days later, I got another message, this time not in paper, but in person. Trevor O'Hara. Again. He stood at the foot of my driveway like he owned it, sunglasses perched on his forehead, a folder in hand. "Don't make this a thing," he said. "Then don't bring one." He looked around, trying to seem casual. Her mother's worried. "There are questions about your will, your finances. It's not personal." "It never was," I said. "That's the problem." He handed me the folder. "Look it over. We just want to be sure everything is fair." I didn't take it. Instead, I stepped closer, voice low but clear. You ever speak to her again like she's a liability, I'll make sure the only thing you inherit is silence." His mouth twitched. "She's manipulating you." "No," I said. "She's telling the truth, and you're not used to that." He turned without another word. That evening I sat in the garden with Riley. She was barefoot, toes digging into the warm soil, face turned to the late light. I handed her the sticky note she'd left on the lemon bars. She read it, confused. "You kept this?" "Of course," I said. "It was your first truth written down." She folded it and tucked it into her back pocket. Then she said, not looking at me, "They're going to try to come for what's yours." "I know." "And what if they do?" I smiled. "Then I'll show them what's mine can't be bought. And what's yours, they'll never understand." That was the moment I knew. I wouldn't just protect her. I would preserve her. The next morning I called Thornton, my old friend and lawyer who'd drawn up Helen's will and mine not long after. He was semi-retired now, but sharp as ever. I explained everything, Riley's return, the threats, the sudden interest from her mother's side. He listened quietly. Then he said, "We'll make it airtight, Albert. No loopholes, no access. If something happens to me, she's safe, not just legally, but emotionally. I don't want them near what I've built. We can structure it that way. Trusts, stipulations, everything through a neutral executor. They'll never touch her. And I want it known," I added, "not in money terms, in words, in writing. I want it read aloud. She deserves to hear it." Thornton nodded. "It'll be read." We met 2 days later in his office. It smelled of old leather and eucalyptus. I signed the document slowly, with a kind of reverence. I was handing over not just assets, but intention, my love, in legal form. That evening I called Riley into the living room. "Remember how you once asked me if I thought you'd be okay?" She nodded cautiously. I answered too soon. "Back then, I wanted to believe it. Now I know it." She furrowed her brow. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to hear something." I handed her the official letter, the one Thornton had written, plain spoken but firm. It declared the final revision of my will, placing the shed, the house, and everything tied to my name into her trust. No one could contest it. No one could reach it. No one but her. She read it once, twice, then again, slower. "I don't understand," she whispered. "It's simple," I said. "This is your home, and no one gets to question that again." Tears welled. "You didn't have to." "I did," I cut in, "because one day, long after I'm gone, they'll knock again, and now they'll find a closed door with your name carved into it." She folded the letter like it was something sacred, pressed it to her chest. "I don't care about the house," she said softly. "I care about the fact that you still chose me." I never stopped. That night, she stayed up in the shed, music playing low, pen scribbling. I didn't peek. I didn't interrupt. I only let it be. A few days later, Mrs. Deacon stopped by with a small pie and her usual questions. She'd heard from someone, who'd heard from someone, that Riley's mother was fuming. "She won't go down easy," Mrs. Deacon warned, slicing into the crust. "She already has," I said calmly. "She just doesn't know it yet." In the weeks that followed, Riley began painting again, just watercolors, just for herself. She hung the first one in the shed, a small green door, half open, sunlight pouring in. When I asked what it was, she said, "It's the moment before a life changes." I smiled. "And after?" "I'm still painting that." Her laughter came more often now, unfiltered, sudden, real. She called Elsie her person. She started tutoring at the writing center. Her final essay got published in the campus journal. She didn't tell me at first. I found the copy in the mailbox with only 2 words underlined in red. For Grandpa, not Albert, not guardian, not provider, just Grandpa. I don't remember the last time a title felt that earned. The days began to take on shape again, not out of obligation, but out of rhythm. Morning coffee at the porch table, a crossword half finished because I got distracted by hummingbirds. Riley coming and going, always barefoot, always laughing with someone new. The house had sound again. Not chaos, not intrusion, just the hum of life returning. Then came Nora. She wasn't planned. She wasn't anything at first, just a voice behind me at the farmer's market asking whether Fuji apples kept longer than Honeycrisp. I answered. She smiled. We stood in the shade of the cider tent talking about nothing important for nearly 20 minutes. I told her about my tomatoes. She told me about her succulents. She taught part-time art at the community center and painted coastal birds in her free time. Divorced. 2 sons, both living elsewhere. That was all. A week later, I saw her again at the library's used book sale. She was crouched beside a box labeled Biography, reading the back of a tattered paperback about Georgia O'Keeffe. I picked up the same book when she moved on, pretending I was interested in brushstrokes. She noticed. "You stalking me?" she asked. "Only the literary version of you." She laughed, and it was full-throated, unashamed. I hadn't heard a sound like that in years. We started seeing each other once a week, a walk here, a shared sandwich there. Nothing serious, just 2 older people rediscovering what it meant to look forward to a voice, a face, a hand that didn't demand but offered. Riley noticed. "Who's she?" she asked one morning as I cleaned up the picnic basket. Friend. "She makes you stand straighter. She makes me think about what shirt I'm wearing." Riley grinned. "Good." A few days later, Riley invited Nora for dinner without asking me. "You need a little push," she said, stirring a pot of risotto like a conspirator. I didn't argue. Nora came with a bottle of wine and a small watercolor painting of a finch. "For your garden shed," she said. "Every artist needs inspiration." The evening was warm. We ate on the porch, candles flickering in the breeze. Nora talked about her students. Riley asked about paint techniques. I just listened, content in the space between generations that didn't feel wide anymore. After dinner, while Riley rinsed plates and Nora wandered through the garden, I sat in the quiet for a moment and realized something. I didn't miss Helen less, but I finally believed she'd want me to live again. When Nora left, she kissed my cheek. "Next time, you're cooking," she said. "I burn toast." "Then don't serve toast." Riley watched her go, then sat beside me, barefoot as always. "She's kind," she said. "She is." "You like her." "I do." "She makes you nervous." "She does." Riley smiled. "Good." I looked at her, really looked. The girl who once lied about textbooks and ran to rooftops for photos had become someone I trusted with my most fragile truths. "You made space for her," I said. "You made space for me first." We sat together in silence, the kind that didn't ask to be filled. A breeze rustled the lemon tree. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked at nothing. In that small, still moment, I felt time fold gently, not backward, not forward, just inward. Like the universe had paused to let 2 souls catch their breath. The new door arrived on a Thursday morning. A soft sage green with a glass panel etched with tiny vines. Riley helped me unbox it. She ran her fingers along the grain, admiring the way it caught the light. I'd ordered it months ago, quietly, not knowing if I'd ever feel ready enough to replace the old front door Helen and I had chosen together. But the house felt different now. Not empty, just newer in the places where grief used to cling. Nora came by later that day with a lemon tart and a small wooden sign she'd painted. It read, "Still growing." She hung it near the porch light without asking, as if she knew exactly where it belonged. The door was installed by mid-afternoon. Riley and I stood together on the path, looking at it like a painting in a gallery. "It suits the house," she said. "It suits the future," I replied. Inside, everything felt brighter, though nothing had changed but the door. The living room held the same books, the same throw blankets, the same photo of Helen by the sea. But it was as if the walls themselves had exhaled. Riley's shed got a coat of paint too. We picked it together, a pale blue-gray that reminded her of early morning fog. She added a window box with trailing ivy and small daisies. I built a new step, just a little higher, so she had to pause before entering. She liked the symbolism, said it reminded her that rest, too, required intention. One afternoon, as I watched her water the plants along the shed wall, she turned and asked, "Do you ever think about selling the house?" She nodded. "I used to," I admitted. "Right after Helen died, thought about starting fresh somewhere else. But that always felt like running from something, not toward. And now? Now it feels like the place I was meant to stay in. Not because it holds the past, but because it's where I get to witness change." She leaned the watering can against her leg. "I'm thinking of building something," she said. "Not here, not yet, but soon. Something small, just mine. Where? I don't know, but close. I want roots near yours." Her voice trembled just a little. "You'll build it," I said, "and it'll have your name on the deed from day one." She smiled at that, wide and clear. Then she reached into her bag and handed me a small, sealed envelope. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside was a printout, a notice of a grant she'd been awarded for her greenhouse designs, part of a sustainability fellowship at the college. She'd won first place. "I used your tomatoes," she said, eyes bright. "They were in the proposal photos." I read the letter twice. My hands were shaking a little, but not from age, from pride. We didn't celebrate with champagne. We made tea, sat in the garden, and let the shadows grow long. Later that week, Nora joined us to repaint the side fence. She brought music, Riley brought paintbrushes, and I brought an old radio from the garage. The three of us moved in tandem, as if we'd done this before, this simple act of care, of mending, of tending to a space we'd all come to love. When we finished, Riley stood back, smudged with blue and sweat, and said, "It's ready." "For what?" I asked. "For the next chapter." And just like that, I knew the house was no longer a monument. It was a threshold. That morning, I woke with the sun. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to see the light come through that new green door. There was something about how it filtered through the etched glass, painting the floor with pale vines. As if the house itself were finally breathing with me, I made coffee slowly. No rush. The birds were already up, their songs threaded through the lemon trees. Riley's shoes were by the back door, where she'd kicked them off the night before. A familiar sight now. One I never took for granted. She joined me on the porch a little after 8, wrapped in a shawl and barefoot as always. She held her tea like it was a small treasure. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. Some mornings were made for stillness. After a while, she asked, "Do you think she'd be proud of us?" It took me a moment to answer, not because I didn't know, but because my throat caught. "I think Helen would be proud of who you became," I said, "and who I finally allowed myself to be." We watched a squirrel chase a crow from the garden bed, and for a minute I thought maybe the world had figured itself out in our small corner. A letter came in the afternoon, not from her mother, not from the court, from the college. Riley had been offered a teaching assistantship, part-time, paid. Her own classroom, her own students, her eyes filled when she read it aloud. She laughed through her tears and said, "They want me to mentor other students. Can you believe that?" "I've believed it for a long time," I told her. "They just caught up." We had dinner with Nora that night, just the three of us. Nothing elaborate, baked fish, lemon rice, a bottle of sparkling water. We ate slowly, talking about everything and nothing. Nora kissed my cheek on the way out, whispered, "Thank you for letting me in." "You came through the door," I said. "I just opened it." Later, Riley disappeared to the shed. When I went to say goodnight, I found her asleep at the desk, a pen still in her hand. I covered her with the old quilt Helen had made. On the desk was a sketch, a new greenhouse, this one with open doors and a figure inside. A girl, yes, but something more. A woman who had returned, not as a version of who she was, but as herself. The next morning I sat at the same kitchen table where all this had begun, where once I had read bank statements and questioned smiles. Now it was covered in seedlings and notebooks and 2 mugs, hers and mine. I looked out at the shed. The ivy had started blooming. I opened a fresh notebook. No plan, no outline. Just blank pages and a pen. And I wrote the first sentence. Sometimes the ones we save end up saving us. It was enough. The world outside could try its lawsuits, its letters, its logic, but in here, in this home, in this garden, in this heart, there was peace. And peace, I'd learned, was the loudest kind of strength. The wind picked up. Somewhere, a dog barked. Someone laughed on the street. Riley's footsteps patted across the grass. Grandpa? Yes? Let's plant something new today. I closed the notebook. All right, I said. Let's begin.